Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be an introduction how you can create an expense tracker using Vue 3 and Chart.js. As you can see the demo of this application, we have places where we have basically one expenses table as well as one incomes table. We can basically add transaction whichever you want. We can basically have an income or an expense. We can have different categories for the expenses like for electricity. Let me write the electricity bill, suppose, and this gives me a value of maybe 1000 and submit. As you can see, expenses, the below chart got animated, and whenever we hover over any of those elements, we can see the expenses and all. And for the salary, also something similar you can do from here. You can come here and give the put it income. You can write something maybe like tuition. Maybe how much? 10,000, suppose. You can add that also. And the total expenses and the total incomes calculation will be done, and that will be displayed here. Like the plus is for the incomes, and expenses is $15. I'm just giving it dollar as a denomination. Don't think as the exact value there. Um, Anyways, this is the total overall value which you have currently in your hand. That's it. And for the chart, I'll be using Chart.js. I already have a dedicated video on it, so I would suggest to check that out. In this video, I'll just be using as we go through it. Obviously, I'll explain whatever is required to follow along, but not in too much detail. So I think we can start with the project now. I've already went there and created a basic project with all of the dependencies which are required. I've basically created this white project using Vite. Sorry, I have basically created this Vue project using Vite. And let me show you the package of JSON. Here we have a couple of dependencies which I've already went and installed them. One is a VueUse code library which we'll be using, and there's Chart.js for the charts, and Vue.js which is a wrapper for Chart.js to make it easy for us to work with it in Vue.js. And I've already went and created a basic markup for all of the components which I'll be requiring. Like as you can see in the components, the main is going to be the app component. Let me just tell you what everything is there. Transaction summary is going to refer the transaction component at the top, and add transaction is going to basically enable and open and close a dialog for which I have a add transaction dialog component. For expenses and for incomes, those will be part of the transaction list. And these transaction list is going to contain transactions which are going to be basically denoted by these or individual transactions. And expenses chart obviously is going to refer the expenses chart here below. I've already went ahead and created some couple of constants. I've already hard coded the colors which we'll be using for these tags. Since our categories will be constant, like as you can see here, there are limited categories. So something similarly, we will be having a limited set of colors. You can try to make it dynamic, but I'll be keeping it simple. Other than that, we have some couple of types which we'll be using throughout the application. And I think that is it. And I think we can start it now. So first, and by the I forgot to mention that this is persistent local storage. So we'll be basically using the local storage also. So I think we can start it now with that idea in mind. So first of all, let me create a store where I'll be having the hook composable used. Let me write store transactions, or yeah, and I'll be using use local storage, just provided by VueUse core. I'll be needing a key. Let me take it from types dot expense. The value will be an empty array by default. This is going to be expenses, and I need to give a type also of what kind of transaction each local storage, basically what kind of entry each local storage, each key value will be there inside it. So, so basically, our expense is going to be an array of transactions. Something similar for incomes also. There should be some modifications done for the expense and transaction because, like as you can see here, whenever I select income, the category goes off. But I just want to keep it simple, so I'm just using the same transaction here. Now let me export it. So now we have the expenses and income. So now we can tackle every one of them one by one. So first of all, in the app.view, I'll be using the transaction summary, as you can see here. So let me come back here and just take the transaction summary one. And let me write the logic for that. So as you can see here, we have the top as this whole summary, and left we have the transaction as the incomes, and the right is expenses. So let me first create a couple of computed variables which we'll be using. So what I've done here is like I basically created, I'm basically reducing the value, and or basically you can say adding all the values which are as part of expenses, and I'm just returning that as part of a computed variable using expenses summary. Something similar for the incomes also. Let me import it also. And for the summary, which is going to be the overall summary, again I can write a computed variable there also. But I'll be using the computed properties which you already created on the top, which is going to be nothing but expenses, not sorry, it should be incomes. Let me just return them. I think I've done some mistake here. Oh yeah, and I think again I can cut this, remove this, and paste it. Okay, this I think this should work fine. Now we need to come on the top and just add the values for each of them. It's going to be the overall summary. This is going to be the incomes summary, and this is going to be the expenses summary. Now we can use this in the applet view in the top. I've given a basic height and width, as well as I've given it a basic size on what it should be below the medium width screen. Okay, some basics Tailwind stuff. That's it. Did it board correctly? Yes. Don't ignore the dialog visible for now. We are going to use it later on. So now what I can do is like let me run this also to show it to you. Let me open another terminal, another tab, and make it 5174. As you can see, there's some issue here. Let me come to transaction store. Okay, here I did a mistake. It should be income. I think now it should work fine here. So this was for the transaction summary. Now we can come back to, first of all, the add transaction button. Let me come here and just create a button here. First of all, just give a div tag, give a class of flex. Only in this place I'll be using some CSS. Rest others I've already went ahead and created a markup. Let me give a padding and margin top 3. That should be okay, I guess. So add transaction, whenever we click on it, we're gonna basically toggle this is dialog variable, which I've already went and created it. Let me just do that. So now we can go ahead and create the transaction dialog. So let me add that. This is gonna basically be displayed only if this dialog visible is true, and whenever an event will be emitted by it, uh, close dialog, and whenever it is emitted, it's gonna basically close this dialog. Just copy paste. Okay. Now we can come back to the. Now basically we can come to add transaction dialog first. Uh, just ignore this. So now we need to first of all have couple of events. So what I'll do is like let me emit the event. Let me first write the logic for the emitted event which will be emitted by this component itself. So whenever this let me just show it to you now. Whenever this button is closed or whenever the submit is clicked, I'll basically close this dialog. So for that reason, let me come here in the top. This is the code which is refers to close button. So I'll just come here and write it. Emit close dialog. Now if I close it, it's gonna close. And whenever this submit button, whenever this form is submitted, I would like a function to be called, which is gonna be add transaction. And at the end, I would like to trigger the close dialog also. So now what I can do is like I need to just basically write the reactive variables for all of them, like type, description, amount, etc. So let me just write them first, then we can discuss again. By default, I'll give it expense as a value, but I'll just give it the option to let it know that it can be any type, either expense or income. Then I'll just give description, which is going to be empty by default. Then I'll give amount, which I'll give 0 as the value. Type, description, amount, and I think something else was also there, which is category. So I'll just give the category also, const category. By default, I'll give categories. First value as which is going to be food as a category value. And now I think we can use it wherever it's required. So let me come at first for the select. It's going to be V model type. And for description again, it's going to be description. For category, it's going to be category. For amount, it's going to be amount. Now I think we can create a couple of types for the here. So let me first write value is going to be by default I'll give it types dot expense is the option, and the value also side will be types dot expense only. Similarly for incomes. So now we have the type. And I would like the category to be only be visible in the case of expense. In income, I don't want the category to be shown. So what I'll do is like, sorry about that. So let me come back here. So I've already went and created a template. So I'll just do a weave check. If the type is equal to the type.expense, only then it should be shown to user, the category. And for the category, again, I need to create a couple of options. So I think it's going to be V for category. This is going to be, now it's coming fine, I guess. And the value is also coming fine. You can give a key also. I'll just give a category value because I think it's unique for us. I think this is somewhat okay. Now we need to come back to the add transaction. Let me add the logic for it. If type is equal to types.expense, that is it's in expense, then we'd like to do something else. If the type is something else, which is income in our case, then we would like to do something else. Something is nothing but just like pushing to a different array. So what we have to do is like we need to take the expenses dot value dot unshift. So what I've done is like I will be basically whenever an expense is there, I'll be pushing it to the expenses array, and when which is again going to be stored in local storage. And whenever it's an income, I'll be pushing it to the incomes array, which is again going to be stored in local storage. So that's what I'm doing here. And why I've used unshift instead of push because unshift is going to basically insert the element at the top, and I would like whatever new transaction I'm doing to be at the top. That's the reason. Otherwise, I could have put it push. I have used the push, but then it would have showed the end, which would not look good. I felt like that. I think specific reason for that. So let me copy everything here. For date, what I'll do is like I'll be using the date functions to local date string method. It's gonna give us a date in this format, which I felt was enough for our scenario. So okay, it should be type dot value because it's a reactive variable. Similarly for below also. And let me just copy this. Again, here category was supposed to be not required, but since I put in the type in the category, I'm just pushing it. But anyway, I'm not using for computation, so I'll just ignore it for now. But you can remove this category and just modify the types here. Uh, Create one more type from transaction and just have the category there, not there. Or let me do one thing. Let me make category as optional here. It should be fine, I guess. This is okay, I guess now. Okay, I think this works fine. So we have the transaction. Now let us try if it works or not. To be on a safe side, let me refresh it. Let me add transaction. Food is gonna be something else. I'll just add water. Or let me do one thing. Let me add an income. It's very easy to visualize there. Income is gonna be. I think there is something wrong I've done here. Let me check, come back and see. These are first of all some different keys I think I have used from the previous one. Uh, this is the previous value which I had from some experience. Let me do one thing. Like since now the form is already there, let me just remove it and let me just check out once the keys which I have in the transactions. As you can see, it's type.expense is going to be expense. So let me come here and just remove it. Delete. Similarly for income also. Delete. Now everything is gone. Now let us come back and add one transaction. First of all, expense is food. Let me just write food. 100, save. -100 is working fine. Let me add income, salary, 2, 3. I think it's working somewhat fine. Okay. So now the transaction is working fine. Now I think we can come back to the transaction list, or you can say transaction. We're going to handle both transaction list as well as the transaction. Each transaction list is going to contain the transactions. We're going to basically iterate over the expenses. For each expense, we're going to create a transaction and show it in the transaction list. This is basically, you can say, a presentation component to contain all the transactions which we'll be creating for each transaction, nothing much. We'll have one component which referred the same thing instead of having two components separately. And to make it somewhat reusable, so I have done two components as such. Anyway, let us come back here. And each transaction for each of the expenses or the incomes, and we basically put in the transaction list, this transaction list component. So for that, let me just create a transaction. I already have went ahead and created a transaction component as I've shown you just now, and I've already imported it. So let me just have V for expense of expenses, and let me pass it. The transaction is the whole key. Let me just check, come back to transaction. I already had the component here, which is going to need a couple of things. One is going to be description, date, category, and amount. I'll just pass you the transaction itself. That should be enough for it. This is going to be nothing but expense. For key, I'll give it the index for now, but you can have some better keys also. Let me just copy it and paste it for the incomes. Here, I'll just change it to income, and let me import incomes also. I think that should work fine somewhat, I guess. Let me see in here if anything is there, and let me go to app.view, and below add transaction, let me import transaction list. As you can see, we are getting something. The only thing is like we need to come here and just add those logic for everything. So let us come back and do it now. So first of all, we'll be having define props. This is going to be transaction, which is going to be of type transaction. Let me write props here. I might need it later on. So now what we have to do is like uh, this. Let me just come here and show it to you. The bill is going to be description. So let me write transaction dot description. Then below we'll be having a couple of things. One is going to be the date, and is going to be the tag. For date, I'll just have the date here. For the tag, I'll just use the tag or category. And here is going to be the amount. So transaction dot amount, save. Let us see. As you can see, something is coming fine, and if we just increase it, it's going to come like this. And the category, as you have seen, I have not given a category for the incomes. So for this reason, what I'll do is like, let me come here and just have the transaction category. Uh, Let me give it a weave that only if the category is there, only then show this, uh, you can say chip or tag in our case, or category in our case. I think this is somewhat working fine. You can add more transaction, etc., and check it out. I think this should work fine overall. So now I think we can come to the main part of this chart. Again, I would suggest you check out my previous video because I'll just be referring somewhat of those concepts which I already have explained in that video. But I think we can come back to it now. So let me come to expenses chart and just show you what is already there. As you can, there is nothing much added here. So we can start now, I guess. So let me just first of all add the chart component. This is going to be required. As you can see, I'm importing chart, JS, arc element, etc. from chart.js. and then I'm importing something called donor from the Vue.js library. So I'll be using now the Chart.js. I think I'll just give a default value of empty array object, and I'll be using that in the donor chart, this data component. So I'll just give it the data. Data is going to be referring to a data which is going to be the uh, I think this word is getting older, but you'll understand what data is going to have later on. Other than that, we'll be having something called options, which is going to have value as responsive true and maintain aspect ratio as false. This is required so that our chart looks good in the small screen as well as big screen. As you can see, whenever I'm trying to increase, it's somewhat responsive that way. You can check it out in more detail in the documentation. Otherwise, I think I should have covered in my previous video also. You can check it out there also. But anyways, now we can come here. And what I'll do is like I would like to watch the expenses value. So whenever any expenses has been added, that should be reflected in the chart itself. Like I showed you a demo, I think also where I've added expenses, it has basically done an animation and added the chart. So to make it reactive, we need to basically listen and watch instead of I could have went a different way used where basically I could have used on mounted and triggered watch, but I just want to keep it simple, so I'll be using watch here itself. So I'll just write new expenses and I'll call format expenses with that. And what I'll do is like, since I would like this watch to be done immediately whenever this component gets mounted, so I'll call write the function. Basically, I'll pass true value to the immediate key here. Other than that, I would like if any changes I've done to the expenses array itself as a whole, I would like basically I would like to watch it this whole array in a deep level. You can check this out more in detail about the watch function if you're getting confused in a documentation itself. But I would need the deep value also to be true so that I can watch for changes inside the expenses array. I'll do one thing first. I'll just uncomment and show it to you, then maybe we can add it back. So now what we'll do is like basically we'll be writing logic for format expenses. So before that, let me explain you some things. As you can see here, we have veggies, which is a food category, and fruits, which is a food category, and total value is 400. That we are showing in the chart. So basically, we're aggregating everything, whichever has the same category. So we'll be writing that logic in the format expenses, and basically we'll be also be manipulating the data value here, so that whenever any new expense has been added, it's gonna basically when basically we're watching the expenses, and whenever any new expense is being added, it's going to call this format expenses with the new expenses, and we're going to update the value so that it reflects correctly in the chart. So for that, let me first of all write transaction here to get auto completions. Then what I'll do is like, let me first create a map here. I'll be basically using a map to keep track of the category and the values. The key is going to be the category, which is going to be the electricity, and the value is going to be the value which we get inside the map. So let me just create it. It will become more clear while I write the code. And let me do one thing. Let me restructure it. I'll be in category. Yeah, I just need to have this. I'll be needing the category and the amount only. So what I'll do is like first I'll check if the map already has some entry with this category or not. Like in our case, it will be something like rent because rent there doesn't exist any entry till now for that. So if map has this category, so if like for food, suppose if there's already category like food, we'll first of all get the old amount which is already there in the map, and we're going to update the map with the new amount. So we basically update this entry of food, as you can imagine here. So I'll have category, old amount plus amount. Otherwise, if it's a new entry, we'll basically add the value itself directly, which is going to be category amount. So this is going to basically update our expenses, and whenever we update expense, we'll be updating a chart also. So to do that, what we'll do is like after data.value. This is a very specific structure I'm using it. This check out my previous video for that. But anyways, we'll have the labels, which is gonna be nothing but keys of the map. That's what you want, as you can see here. The keys are going to be the labels, as you can see in the top as well as when we hover over it. So there's a very easy way to do that. We have to do map.keys. Let's call it. Then we'll have data set. I think it should be data, I guess. And it's gonna have a value of data set. This is again gonna be values. And then data set is gonna be there. Then we have to do background color, which is gonna be nothing but colors, which I already have added in our constants. So that should be fine. Let me come to app.view and just put the chart here. So it should be what expenses chart, I guess. Okay, I think there's some issue here, I guess. I'm assuming it's again with the key itself, I guess. Should be data sets maybe. And this should be data. And I think this should be an array, I guess. Let us see now. Yeah, as you can see, something is coming up fine. And if we come back here and try to add one more expense, yeah, let me do one thing. Let me first increase the size amount, yeah, so that we can see. Expense is suppose food, is suppose 200. Let me just write food and let me get the value 200. As you can see, it had works. As you can see, it is working here, but it's not working here. You are not seeing it. But if I refresh it, the value is 300. And just to be very clear, let me give another value. Rent 500. Submit. As you can see, we are having the rent here, but we don't have any transaction here. But if I refresh it again, we'll be having the rent. You can ignore the color as such. I think there's some issue with the color, but anyways, we can fix it later. But as you can see, it's not coming properly. So what I can do is like I can have the deep true, refresh it, and now what I'll do is like I'll again add a transaction here. Electricity description will be electricity, and let me add the amount of 500. Submit. As you can see, we are getting the electricity now, and I'm assuming there's some issue. Okay, there's a typo here. It should be background color. Yeah, as you can see, it's working fine now. And whenever we add a transaction, we are seeing the reflected also. So I think this was it, I guess. I don't think there's anything I've missed out as such. Okay, and by the way, I'll be having the code for all this, whatever I've done till now in the YouTube description. You can check it out. And do check out my channel. There are other videos as well on Vue.js itself, etc. And React, obviously. And hopefully, I'll have more videos as such based on the response in this video and other videos also on Vue.js itself. So do like, subscribe. It motivates me to make more content on Vue.js itself. And that's it. I think this is the end of this video, and bye.